Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to the Cross Commission Podcast. My name is Jake Nazar. I'm joined by my co-host, Saif Fakadu. Saif, how you doing this evening?
Jake, loving it, man. We're almost in April. Easter's right around the corner. It really is like just 10. I know I fast forward the year a lot. We had a whole discussion on that. But it was like really just like 10 weekends, really, and the entire thing is done. Like 5 weekends before Selection Sunday, really. And then from there, it's just like kind of an early Memorial Day. So, yeah, the 26th will kind of be here right before you know it. So.
Let's not think like that. So we still got 2 months. We got a lot of lacrosse left to be played.
Exactly. It's like so much packed in. You know that movie I always reference, everything all at once at the same time, whatever it's called. That's what it always feels like. Just barreling down the hill, like on one of those prairie, like things coming down. But yeah, no, feeling good. Weather's getting a little better, consistently. So still dips a little bit with the cold weather, but otherwise can't complain.
Yeah, it has been a bit chilly lately. We got a good amount to get through. I think we got a fun show on tap. It was a big weekend last weekend. Some big games once again. This weekend, I think, pleasing for people. Once again, a pretty diversified, laid out slate. 2 Sunday games once again. One of them on the Big Ten Network, one of them on everybody's favorite lacrosse streaming service, Corrigan Sports Enterprises. We got conference play basically underway, but the Corrigan game is UNC Harvard, which is thought was a big game coming in. It's the biggest game, I guess, rankings wise of the weekend.
Oh yeah, no, it's a legitimate top 5 RPI and ranking.
Yeah, it's a two top five teams. An opportunity, for a top 10 win at least between those two teams. Some good news people will be happy with from this afternoon. Richmond Notre Dame will be broadcast by ACC Network Extra. So that game, which could easily be number 1 versus number 2, and that will be broadcast on April 4th in Chicago. So next weekend. That game will be a broadcast. You can stream it via ACC Network Extra, the Watch ESPN app. So people will be very pleased about that one. Currently, the top 2 teams in the our poll, the media poll, all polls. Richmond is the top team in RPI right now. If Richmond beats Notre Dame next weekend, you would have to say that Richmond probably has the inside track for the number 1 seed.
Oh yeah,
feels crazy, but that's where we're at. If they can win that game, they would have wins over Notre Dame, which would be pretty significant. They of course would have no loss. They also went over Cornell, went over Virginia. We'll see how that does or does not shift Georgetown, which could come back into play. And of course, a 0 in the loss columns. St. Joe's is still a potential quality one that's out there for them. Again, we'll see how some of these things shakes out. But Richmond is, I believe, I know on our pal Mark Hart at Fieldy Stick, his most recent projection, Richmond was the number 1 seed. And I imagine that'd be the case in most of them. I think Stevens might have had Syracuse number 1 in his. Syracuse certainly has a plethora of excellent victories after their long road trip and then beating Georgetown very honestly, very decisively on Sunday in a manner I didn't expect. It was, I think, the best game Syracuse has played start to finish in probably since the Maryland game. And it was, look, as 2 people who were very high on Georgetown coming into the season, it was rather eye-opening how much better Syracuse was than Georgetown and how much more athletic they looked than Georgetown.
Pushing around. Yeah.
It was kind of, Not, I think, with Georgetown. It was more reminiscent of Georgetown's games against those teams from a couple years ago. Georgetown, I think, kind of got there athletically, physicality wise, the past couple years. They just couldn't get over the hump. That was not the case on Sunday. Syracuse was significantly better all across the field. Anyhow, we'll do more bracketology next week.
You can see how energized they were too. I mean, like almost 7,500 people out there. First game in weeks.
Yeah.
And like given the 4-game winning streak going into it, like it's almost primed to be juiced. And that is the juice. The orange. So that's how they really roll on that there.
Syracuse is in a great spot. They're in the conversation. They're 8-2. They're back. I think they're 6th in the polls, maybe back in the top 5, but they're 2nd in RPI right now. Again, they've got a crap ton of great wins. The only team, like the lowest you could probably put them right now will be 4th, I would say. You obviously have the 2 undefeated Notre Dame and Richmond. They lost to Princeton, but other than that, nobody has the volume of wins that they do. And they may be missing a great win. That kind of like a top-notch elite victory. But again, to be fair, who really the top 5, kind of the top-notch wins are sort of, I would say, kind of thin on offer, I would say. There are 4 teams with top 5 wins. They're Princeton, who has 2, Harvard, Cornell, who beat Princeton, and Penn State. But Notre Dame's a fascinating team, and we talk about Notre Dame a good bit of where kind of Notre Dame is at. Notre Dame's best win is Ohio State. I mean, Georgetown, I guess, is 10th in RPI. But like they're 3-4. Georgetown could be 3-5 after this weekend. So that gives you an idea. They beat Ohio State, which I think is a good win, but it also is, I think, kind of volatile. It could go a lot. It could get a lot better. It could also get worse. They beat Maryland, which, right win, wrong year, as we always like to say. It's not to say I think Notre Dame's in trouble or anything like that. It's just, it is kind of crazy to think this is Notre Dame. You always look at Notre Dame's schedule at the start of the year and you think it's always, low on fat, high on carbs. Like it's just, they juice that thing up. And oddly enough, this year, it hasn't really played out that way. Maryland, of course. Georgetown it's weird. The math always works out the way it works out, but it is interesting how it can change. Georgetown is significantly better off metrics-wise than they were a year ago, but they are significantly worse record-wise. And also, they still haven't really beat anybody. I think they beat Penn. And then Ohio State's another really good example. Ohio State's in the same exact spot they were last year, almost identically, except they lost. They didn't beat Notre Dame. So it's basically the exact same position, and yet they are in. Granted, the win last week really did a lot for them, but like if they had lost that game last weekend, they would have been the records would have been basically identical, but they would have been in a much worse position. Which basically just tells you all about how much this stuff can change. Based on the things around you. Like, is Ohio State any worse of a team? I think they are a worse team, but like they're still very good. And yet their situation is much worse just because the Big Ten as a whole is significantly worse than it was last year.
No, you're right. I mean, the Utah loss last year was definitely like an anchor on like them early on. The numbers
early on, yeah. By the end, it wasn't really
this year only losing to Notre Dame. I know what you're saying. Like, I still think pretty confident of two Big Ten teams at the very least in AQ and at large, and
I would flip that at the most.
most
At the very least implies that they could get more. They're not going to get more than that. So I think yes. I think the most likely outcome is the Big Ten gets AQ and 2 at larges. They're not going to get any. They're not going to get any more than that.
I could see Hopkins, Penn State, and Ohio State.
Sure.
Kind of making that's
the most likely. This is the most likely outcome right now.
Yeah, but historically they kind of usually get 2. You're right. There's been an off year. Non-conference schedule hasn't been as dominant as it's been. Maryland, kind of being an anchor. It'd be kind of crazy. Remember we were talking at the beginning of the season, like it would be best for the Big Ten if Rutgers and Michigan went 0-5. If Maryland is the team that everyone beats up.
I think they need.
Well, it kind of leads into our first topic about funniest endings. So maybe that'll be like an audible.
It's weird. I still think they need. It's tricky because this is where this stuff gets us. I think the Big Ten still needs Maryland to be in the top 20. I think you still want Maryland as a opportunity. They're right now they're 21st. However, the easiest way for Maryland to get there is by beating some of these teams. Is beating Rutgers and Michigan enough to seal Maryland in the top 20? Probably. But yeah, that's interesting. Again, Richmond. There's 2 undefeated teams left, or 3 rather. 5. What am I thinking? Harvard is undefeated.
Yeah,
I thought they had a loss.
Crimson Tide.
Great movie. Great movie.
We should NCR month with like a movie pod.
we might need to. I watched they did
a Good Friday special. Oh, that'd be great.
Oh man. I did the Nice Guys because that was this week's one. That really is a good, like a classic. They just don't make movies like this.
No.
There should be 3 Nice Guys by now. Like I think it was was it Bill who mentioned it? He was like Gosling's got to have the juice now to get that greenlit, right?
I mean, after what he did with Hail Mary, I still want to see it.
I think either this weekend or next week. But I mean, he's got to have the juice to. I mean, I know it doesn't seem like his personality, but I feel like that's got to.
I think he wants to do it. He wants to do it. Russ wants to do it. The daughter can now have an enhanced role as a little bit older. Like, yeah, they could definitely.
Yeah, they could. Or I remember they talked about it. I think that was just one of those fake rumors, but they could easily do that as one of those, like, I think CR mentioned this on the pod too. It was like the BBC, just like 3 episodes. They're like an hour and a half.
Oh yeah.
They could just like rip like those off every couple of years and just do 3 smaller.
With the streaming, like I always felt like just make the length of shows whatever you want. 145 minutes and one an hour and a half. You could do a 3-part like content, I guess we would say, like, but it's just a movie. Yeah, exactly. I love it's easy to get into British shows because it's just like you're not like dropping like 8, 9 episodes, all an hour. You can sometimes get them with like half hour, but yeah, they mess around and have different length.
Yeah.
I did want to shout out Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie.
You mentioned that. I gotta see that.
I loved it, and I've been like, I was like, kind of yelling at ChatGPT. I was like, why don't they just release the on-demand date so I know when they're actually? And they're like, oh, there's a lot of incentives. I'm like, but yeah, I just kept searching, and then finally there was an article like, it's dropping on the on Tuesday, so I just literally immediately bought it Tuesday morning.
So there's 5 on. Yeah, that starts that brief detour. Not sorry, really. But there's 5 undefeated teams left. Shout out Sacred Heart, who got into the top 20 of our poll this week at last. Duke 8-0. We did the Duke conversation last week. I feel like we got the most unsatisfying answer possible. We basically pushed it to another week.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't win by 5 or 6 and be like, yes, for sure, Duke is great. They didn't lose and be like, boom, redeemed. They won a very gritty, slugfest-y kind of defensive game. Denver got up 4-0. and then scored 3 goals the rest of the game, but did come back a little bit in the second half when Duke scored like 6 or 7 in a row after going down 4-0. But Denver had a chance late. Denver had a chance to tie the game with the ball. I was left with Duke with the feeling of what I think a lot of these teams just like. There's so many teams out there. I think Duke is the case like this. I think Ohio State maybe, though. I'm looking forward to your little bit on Ohio State later. I think you could throw Denver in here, to be honest with you, to a degree. A lot of teams this year, I watch them. I think even Hopkins to a degree, even though I think they're better offensively than Ohio State and Denver are. There's a lot of teams I watch where I'm like, this team is like 1 to 2 pieces away offensively from being a nightmare to deal with. And I think Duke, that was the story with Duke last year. Their defense was the strength of that team the last kind of month and a half of the season, and it's what got them into getting a home game and kind of turning things around. I think that the defense is still just as advertised. It's still the strength of that team. The offense looks kind of like we thought, a little maybe light on big time pieces. I think there's a lot of teams out there that are on the offensive side, kind of 1 to 2 pieces away. And then I think on the flip side, you have teams like, we talked about this on the live show, North Carolina and Penn State, that feel like they have the offensive pieces, but you kind of have the question in goal. I don't think there's the closest thing to a complete. Notre Dame, maybe. I mean, we thought Notre Dame took a week off in the middle of the season, which is kind of odd. This is again this thing with Notre Dame. I feel like it's like, where have they been?
No, artificial scarcity. They know what it according. That's what he's doing. Starting the season late.
As soon as I start to get a feel for them, they're just like, yeah, we're just not going to play this week. Okay, sure.
No Georgetown game.
They're like the most. They're like the most low key number 1 team I've ever seen. They're the number 1 team in the country, and it's like nobody's talking about them. And to be fair,
this guy. I'll talk about him early, Jake. Listen, far be it for me to remind everyone.
I was talking about Notre Dame, who was ranked like 5th in a preseason poll to start the season.
I nailed it. I was so funny. I was going to make a tweet about like the one thing about Princeton losing, and kind of dropping on our poll for like unanimous Notre Dame. We had unanimous Notre Dame for number 1.
No, me and
Adam.
Me and Adam just we just swapped Richmond and Princeton's place.
I guess my main thing was like, at least I didn't have to move my number 1 because I was like, yeah, my dark horse is it's staying in it. But no, you're right. They haven't been, but I think it's a lot of that. What we say, the part of it, the not being able to see them. The Georgetown game again. That's not determinative, but this one less game we could kind of see against at least quality.
Yeah, it's a data point that you just don't.
Yeah,
it counted, of course. I'm not like being like it's not like the game didn't happen like Maryland, Richmond, or Hopkins, Georgetown. But 1, we didn't see it. 2, indoors is always a little. It's always a little weirder. Look, I think if Notre Dame played Georgetown outside, they would have beat them. Probably
the same
result. But it adds to the just sort of oddness of their season so far.
It's almost like, and I don't mean this in a pejorative, but an inverse of the rock show that was that 3-year run. I mean, they didn't make it to Final Four the 3rd year, but like that was the Notre Dame story for multiple years. Now I have a team with a lot of new faces, a lot of young boys that are doing well. It's still really stout defense, but it's a quieter, and I think they probably love it too, allowing the players to like. It's one thing about being in the clique lights, they're really bright, and it's like hard to like always be there. That's what we're seeing with like Princeton. Not that they were surprised by Cornell, but like the Harvard BU, like you have the really high ranking for a lot.
Maryland.
A lot of these teams they do this year too. We just kind of mentioned that about Michigan, which Maryland will play this week. Like that was. That's your target, especially when you have a really high rankings. It's like now it just gets even tougher. It's Harvard kind of saw. It was like not that they skated away BU, one they didn't cover. It was a push, the fact that BU put up that effort at home. I think that's pretty much what Harvard should be expecting the rest of the way. Even the teams that are maybe a little bit outside of that. What Yale did to Princeton, that one too. That was Yale was oh, let's we can maybe not be back in the top 10, but knocking off Princeton at home, we're definitely shaking up their season, put them in a different position in the Ivy race. So yeah, it should just be what you expect. Even if you're new to the top of Mount Everest, that's what they say. The wind's hardest up at the peak. So Harvard should be expecting this the rest of the way. Richmond's answered everything. That's one thing. But I can see with Richmond 8-10 just being weird. You know what I'm saying? That's for them, most of the teams in the conference. Shout out to St. Joe's. Who knows? Maybe they steal that.
That's the only one to me.
Yeah, and
I just think they're too. They look 1, 2 locked in, and 2. I just think they're too good.
I
think they're. I mean, they destroyed UMass. Harvard's an interesting point you make, because I think this goes along with what our point was. Again, 5 undefeated teams. Sacred Heart kind of in their own category. Duke, we talked about, kind of not quite having necessarily this was the first kind of indication we got of Duke, and it still feels a little unanswered. Their last 3 games against St. Joe's, Air Force, and Providence in terms of offensive efficiency, just unadjusted, 36%, 36%, 44%, down to 24% against Denver. Now, Denver's a very good defensive team, but still kind of, an indicator. We kind of need to know probably a little bit more. And we'll learn more this week. They go to the Dome. Duke, Dome, never won, right?
I think
I feel like we do this every time.
It's always really close. I'll grab their history while you bam.
So that's we'll learn more there. Harvard, I think, is an interesting one. If you're starting to look at the numbers a little bit, some concerning, I won't say concerning, but trends emerging that maybe aren't what you'd want to see. Harvard's first 3 games of the season, 58% face-off win percentage against Providence, 51% against Colgate, 59% in that win over Cuse. Last 5 weeks, 45% against Marquette, 42% against Michigan, 28% against Penn, 51% against Dartmouth, and 45% last night against BU. The face-off percentage has now dropped on the year to 47.5%. It's still better than it was right now but it's 7% better than it was last year. However, in terms of the ranking, we're now down to 55th. We're starting to get maybe potentially that anchor again on Harvard. The offense is still. I mean, they haven't been below 40% in adjusted offensive efficiency since the first week of the season. They haven't been below 40% in unadjusted offensive efficiency, just pure goals by possessions. They've been above 40% for 5 straight games. The offense is absolutely pouring the ball in the net. The defense, however, 30% against BU, 38% of that game against Dartmouth. Dartmouth was really able to kind of take it to them. Harvard undefeated, but that team a couple weeks ago, when we looked at their profile, that looked really, looked like a Final Four type profile, now starts to look a little more questions there. Yes, the best offense, but you have the 13th ranked defense and you have the 55th ranked faceoff unit. That feels dicey as far as making a deep tournament run goes. Again, they're obviously 8-0. You've got UNC this weekend. They've made no mistakes so far, but the Harvard team I've seen the last few weeks looks a lot more like the team from last year than I think the team of the first kind of 4 or 5 games of the season.
And we'll see. Maybe Wambach really is that decisive feature if they can dominate the face-off, and it's just kind of crazy this one area. So even though it's been decent, their plus or minus possessions are kind of towards the bottom quarter. Graham Stevens has really kind of helped, like, been like a major, not band-aid because defense is not horrible, but yeah, like it's been able to like be really efficient.
The first 3 games of the season, Harvard was +1 in possessions across those 3 games. In their last 5 games, Harvard is -35. That's 7 possessions a game on average. That's insane. Like now look, they're winning, but if you spot a playoff team 7 possessions, you're gonna lose. I mean, or your offense needs to be quite like just super, and maybe it can be, but I guess this is my thing. It looked great. I remember that Penn game, the start of that Penn game, first quarter. It's like, okay, this team's for real. And it feels like ever since then, it's been a lot more like last year. Look, we'll see. Maybe this week against UNC, they can find a way to deal with Wambach, and their defense can keep those guys quiet. And if they get a win, that would prove a lot. And then they have Princeton and Cornell to finish the season, their last 2 weeks. So we'll see. Mid-season lulls can happen. And again, it's always good, awesome to be winning while your play is maybe sliding a little bit. But they look they don't quite look like the team at the start that they did when they beat Cuse. It looks a little different now. So that's Harvard. That's Duke. Notre Dame we've talked about. The last 3 games that we saw them, the offense was kind of a bit up and down. Below 30% in offensive efficiency in all 3 of those games. The defense is tremendous. But a little, maybe a bit more, some questions. They're shooting the ball pretty well. But turnover rate, you kind of look 34% against Michigan, 31% against Ohio State. So turning the ball over about a third of their possessions last couple of games. Not great offensively. Again, 11, 9, and 9 goals. Defense does look excellent. They obviously got Rich Yardelli in goal. So all of the aside, Richmond is the one that so far I still think you really have probably the fewest questions about. But Notre Dame will certainly be the toughest test they've had. So I just think that kind of gives you an idea, I guess, of what year we're in right now, or what the lay of the land is. Even the teams at the top feel there's uncertainty there. And so even the teams that are quote unquote best positioned, Richmond's in a great spot. Notre Dame's is still, look, they're 6-0 and they're 4th in RPI. They're in a pretty darn good spot. Harvard's in a pretty good spot. They're 7-0. They're 7th in RPI. Duke is in. They haven't done anything. They haven't done anything wrong so far. They're 8-0 and they're 8th in RPI, which is just a matter of their schedule. But still, they're in a decent spot. All these sorts of teams, again, Richmond is the best, is the closest of like maybe Cuse. Is the kind of the best mix of like Cuse and Princeton. I would say I can't forget about Princeton. Maybe those two are the best match of resume, and you feel good about how they're playing.
I feel like you're circling around like, who's been tested the most? Because of the undefeated, shout out Sacred Heart. Look at the strength of schedule. The best is Notre Dame at 13th. So none of them. Harvard's at 20th, Duke 28th. Richmond 16th. Again, not bad schedules, not that they're like ducking people. We kind of made some jokes about Duke. But like you're right about Syracuse. They have the second toughest. So they've been tested a lot. They're not undefeated. Princeton, number 1. Hopkins, 6. Like these teams. Cornell. I think they kind of got back into the conversation after beating Princeton. But 7th strength of schedule. So I definitely get what you're pointing. North Carolina, 8th. Another team that like. Listen. I was kind of the contrarian on UNC on Saturday, so I should make a note. The schedule this year is the best schedule they've had in, I don't know, a long time. Yeah,
we've taken some critiques of their schedule before. They've tested. They've definitely tested themselves.
Joe, the boss heard you, and he opened up the Big Ten to Penn State and be able to play somebody.
Opened up the door. It's like a peace treaty. Oslo,
Yeah,
Oslo welcoming Penn State into the. It's like after the Cold War, he's breaking welcoming Penn State into the.
It's just like you and Reykjavik. You're the mayor of Reykjavik. Reagan.
It's the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan.
You're just no. Eisenhower just driving through Paris. Yeah, top down, everyone's saluting. But yeah, your point is right. It's like a mixture of wins, but also being tested throughout. Up and down your schedule.
Your point about the strength of schedule is really great. 2 of the top 5 teams in strength of schedule are Maryland and Georgetown, who are 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Now it's not always like that. Like sometimes we see the teams who are top in strength of schedule are also like last year was a good example. Maryland had one of the toughest strength of schedules and was, the number 2 seed. Maybe see if I can actually go back and look a bit at this. Maybe I can find this data to kind of give us an idea. See if I find it. Don't know if I have it here. All right, here we go. This is just like, this is from April 9th of last year. So this is as of, kind of where we are right now in the season. Princeton had the first ranked strength of schedule and was 8-2. At that point, Princeton was 8-2 and had beaten 6 top 20 teams, including 4 top 10 teams. Maryland was 5th in strength of schedule and was 8-2. Some similarities. Like Penn State was 5th and 7-3. But you still like Michigan was 3rd in strength of schedule at this point. Last year was 6-5. They did have wins over Maryland and Hopkins. The Hopkins win faded up. Not much. I think Hopkins was still like 17th in RPI there. Virginia was 2nd in strength of schedule at kind of this point last year and was 5-6. Like Virginia had 6 losses and all of them were to top 15 teams.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still some, like this year, Maryland and Georgetown are kind of in that kind of sphere right now. But yeah, like the strength of schedule of the top 5 teams in strength of schedule, there are 15 losses. That does feel like a bit more than it usually is. In the top, there's only one team, which is UNC, which is top 10 in strength of schedule and has fewer than 2 losses. Now, Cuse has played 10 games, so 8-2. That's still pretty darn good. Princeton's played 2 fewer games than UNC. But yeah, then when you get to that 11-20, you got Notre Dame who's 6-0, Richmond who's 8-0, Harvard who's 8-0. Shout out Colgate, 2-6 with the 17th best strength of schedule. Michigan 3-6, 18th best strength of schedule. So yeah, I think that kind of gets us into the sort of the oddness of this season so far. Listen, shout out to the people who had it. It does feel wide open right now. I don't think there's. I think that we talked about. Is there that we talked about Notre Dame, Princeton, Richmond as. So the top 5 right now is Notre Dame, Richmond, Harvard, UNC, and Cuse. The next 5 is Duke, Princeton, Ohio State, Cornell, and Penn State. I don't know that top 5. I feel much better about the top 5 than I do the next 5. Now, part of that is because Princeton's fallen out of the top 5. That's a big part of it, honestly. But like, what if Duke is for real? And if they are, then Duke and Princeton being 6th and 7th. I feel Penn State's kind of rallied it a little bit. I think they certainly have a high. They certainly have a high ceiling. And that's another thing is usually you can kind of identify teams by who are the high floor team and who are the high ceiling teams. And I don't know that a super big. I think the high ceiling teams are Princeton, maybe Carolina. After that, I don't know. I don't like Cuse. I've always felt Cuse was a high floor team. There's only so low Cuse is going to get with this group, and that's been the case. They've been in the top 10. Like, I know they had that little bit of a drop last year towards the end of the year, but Cuse has basically been in the top. Cuse has basically been ranked somewhere like 5th for 2.5 years with this team. That's been basically where they've been for a long, long time now. But it's like, is Notre Dame a high ceiling team or a high floor team? I don't know. Is Harvard a high ceiling or high floor team? Maybe ceiling. Richmond feels like a high floor team. I think Richmond might have the highest floor. Like, just sustainable week in, week out. Cornell. Like, I don't know that I get it's hard to kind of identify what's the difference between these teams' ceiling and their floor. Which normally I feel like I can get a good gauge on that. Like last year, Maryland was the ultimate high floor team. Maryland's lowest was still so good, but their ceiling was kind of evidently less than Cornell, who clearly had the highest ceiling. Cuse was a high floor team. This year's tougher to figure out. Whose A game is the best? I think it's probably still Princeton. But like, is Notre Dame's A game meaningfully different than Ohio State's? Like, I don't know. Maybe. It's hard to say. They both played Georgetown, and Notre Dame was better. Notre Dame beat Georgetown by more, but it was also at home in a bubble versus on the road. We saw them play each other. It was a 1-goal game. Yeah, UNC's another good example. UNC feels like UNC's A game was probably Hopkins, but a lot of that felt like Hopkins kind of threw it away a little bit with, Dash just kind of like, and then the face. Like, UNC in some ways feels like they've been more of a high floor team now that I think, because they've just kind of been turning out wins by a couple goals here and there every week. 1 over Army, 2 over Penn State, 2 over Penn.
Honestly, yeah, maybe the Princeton loss was probably one of their.
Yeah,
that was like kind of wired.
Like, what's the single most impressive performance you've seen by a team this year? You were just like, okay, wow, like that team that's the favorite.
I mean, for a minute, I felt it was Princeton.
Yeah, it's like, is it Princeton in the first half against Syracuse?
Post Penn State first quarter through, the demolition of Rutgers.
Like the Rutgers, that Rutgers game was one that was like, oh wow, shit.
Yeah, it was like, this is how they can really go. Especially when they get the possession, plus 13 that game. Plus 14, sorry. Yeah, that's why. And the Yale game, like, I wasn't like. But I remember I was like looking at my phone. I think I was at the Penn game, and I was like, "Is this really happening?" I texted you guys in the chat. I was like, "Is Yale going to pull this off?" And then the Cornell loss, like, I think that the crowd was ready for the win. Just to bounce back from the Yale. Close win there, but much closer than they probably should have been. And Cornell, like, definitely, I think I gave too much credit, but Cornell was definitely the better team there. And it wasn't just post first quarter, like
Princeton never really got.
It never got going, but I do think it was, like I said, big. I felt it was a really big game by Cornell's goal.
Oh, sure, yeah, for sure.
That's kind of and a bad game for Croddick. That's what it feels like. One less goal for Cornell, and Croddick makes one more save. Like, maybe that last 15 minutes.
It balances out, though. I mean, what if Croddick doesn't make 25 saves against North Carolina?
Oh, exactly. No, it it is the final score. That's why we love the final score. It is what it is. So, you can't have more victories or the hypothetical things to change the result. But I just meant like, yeah, it's like that's when I kind of felt like, but yeah, like I think they can go. They kind of did that in the Final Four run. You remember? 2002 post Maryland loss, was just running me, and then had a bit of a dip. Didn't even make the Ivy League tournament. Then so made the Final Four. So it's
I still love this Princeton team for sure.
That's what I said. I was like 100 piles. Like, yeah, definitely not selling. But yeah, the best performance, for like sustained. I thought that was really impressive, especially the streaks that they did.
Here's the way let's looking at it. So Princeton has 2 top 5 wins. They've beaten Syracuse and they've beaten North Carolina. The margin of victory in those 2 games was 2 over UNC, and they beat Cuse by 4. Yeah, they beat Cuse by 4. So those are their top 2 wins. Harvard has 1 top 5 win. It's over Cuse. They beat them by 1 goal. Cornell has a top 5 win over Princeton. They beat them by 2 goals. Penn State has a top 5 win over Princeton. They beat them by 3.
Yeah. 6.
6. Okay. I felt so. The biggest margin of victory among all the teams that have a top 5 win is Penn State's win over Princeton.
Yeah. I mean, seeing that live, especially the first quarter, I was like, it's just like.
And then, honestly, here's
2006 Virginia was like reimagined.
I think this hits on our answer question. Whose A game has looked the best? I think it's Penn State's. Because Penn State beat Princeton by 6 and Cornell by like 1 million.
Yeah, they detonated that. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, Penn State's A game looks the best. Now, however, Penn State's C game is, I think, the worst because they lost to Villanova and Navy. I mean, you go by like let's go by top 10. Richmond has 2 top 10 wins. They are over Cornell and Georgetown. They beat Cornell by a goal, and they beat Georgetown by, I think, 4?
Yes.
And they ran away from them a little bit late. Like, that was a pretty competitive game for most of it, but Richmond turned it on late. Syracuse has 2 top 10 wins over Syracuse is 2 one is over Georgetown, and the other is over, what's the other top 10 one? Hopkins. Okay, so Cuse they kind of. Now that gets again. Is Cuse is more of we always say Cuse a high floor team. But Cuse has 2 wins over Hopkins and Georgetown. Did they trail for any minute of those games? Georgetown early. They got down 2-0 early.
Yeah.
But they led for basically all of those 2 games. Other top 10 wins. Carolina's got a top 10 win over Hopkins.
Yep.
That one they led close to out. Ohio State's top 10 win is over Georgetown by 2 goals. So if we look at the top 10 wins and we look at who was most impressive in those wins, I think it's Penn State. I think it's Syracuse. Now, this again gets into we're at a kind of interesting point of the season. Princeton's top wins are over UNC and Syracuse. Syracuse's top wins are over Hopkins and Georgetown. Does feel like that's a bit of a gap in terms of the quality of those 2 teams. Again, Georgetown's the 10th in RPI. Do you really think Georgetown's the 10th best team in the country? I don't think so.
Yeah, 15.
Probably 15. Yeah, 15. I do think Hopkins is knocking on the door of the top 10, but I don't think they're there yet. Whereas I think Cuse and Carolina are pretty clearly top 10 teams. So it feels like we have identified whose A game has looked the best, but I don't necessarily feel any more confident about it. Yeah, I don't know that I feel any better about it. It's like, is Penn State has the best A game? Okay, well they probably have the worst, B- game. So Cuse's A game looks great, but yeah, is Hopkins and is beating Hopkins by 4 and Georgetown by however more impressive than beating Cuse and UNC the way Princeton did? I don't know. Maybe. So yeah. I don't feel we spent 45 minutes here. I don't think we've solved anything.
No.
which is listen, that's awesome. I don't have any, no qualms on that for me. But
It will be
I think
fascinating to see who gets the 1 seed. Because a dark horse, I could see Carolina if they like do what they've done in non-con play, in conference play, they could position
so I guess
themselves.
here's what makes it interesting. The 1 seed, obviously, historically, the numbers are much better to make. It's all but one in the 16-team tournament era to make the Final Four. It's odd though, just because this is something we need to do more on. How many times has the 2 seed lost in the quarterfinals? Because I feel like the 2 seed, when they get upset, it's more in that first round.
Yeah.
It's that first round game. The quarterfinals normally I think they're good, but nonetheless, I can think of 2 off the top of my head. Duke a couple years ago, they lost to Maryland, and I remember Cornell in 2011 losing to Virginia. So I can think of a couple. That's one more than the 1 seeds who have been upset. Because it's hard. Being the 1 seed always does feel like you have a prohibitive advantage. On the flip side, is the difference between 8 and 7 really going to be that? Because the 8 right now is you're probably playing Hopkins or Duke. I mean, those are good teams. I don't know that if you're the 1 seed, you're necessarily afraid of them. Even if we just go by Mark's bracket, like the 7th seed is Cornell. Good team. I don't know that. I think if you're the one or to like the quarterfinal game that would scare you would just be maybe a Penn State. Just it's a proven Final Four team. Or I'm not saying this is going to happen. I don't believe this is going to happen. If somehow Maryland wound up as like the 8th seed, that does feel like one where maybe people would want to see that. Again, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen.
Other 2 seeds, you'll love this. Sorry to interrupt, but I knew there was one that was burning my head. Towns and Syracuse, 2017.
Yes.
In the quarters, yeah.
Absolutely.
That game was just like a beatdown.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't usually think there's a difference between the 7 and the 8, and yet the 1, I guess, is the 1 that much. What's odd? Recently, I felt like the 1 is kind of clearly better than the 2. The past couple number 1 seeds are Cornell last year, which I don't know if they were that much better than Maryland, but they lost 1 game and they won the national title. 2024 Notre Dame, obviously is in if you're doing a 16-team bracket of the best teams ever, 2024 Notre Dame is in the bracket. 2023 Duke, that was a case where they weren't that much. Duke, Virginia, Notre Dame were all the same team that year. 22 Maryland, obviously. 2019 Penn State, I do think there was a gap between them and Duke. But after that, some of those 2010s ones, I don't think the 1 seed was necessarily a clear head and shoulders better than the 2. And yet the 2 seed, for whatever reason, the 1 seed just, I don't know if it's the confidence, it's the intimidation factor maybe of trying to beat the number 1 team. And how many times has the number 1 team really come like close to losing?
I'm thinking you're pretty much guaranteed the Final Four.
Yeah. I mean, last year was close between Cornell and Richmond. I'm trying to see how many opportunities Richmond had a chance to tie that game, didn't they? Because they lost by 1.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely.
I'm just gonna look at the box score to see what the 4th quarter. So that game was 10-9 Richmond going into the fourth quarter. And then Cornell went up 11. Richmond had the lead with 7 minutes to go in that one. And Cornell took the lead with 5 minutes. So that one's close. There's the Carolina-Rutgers game. And then, I mean, the one that Syracuse, 2012 Loyola Denver. I think that was a 1-goal game when Loyola won that one. Oh, big one. Cuse Yale in 2013 in College Park. Cuse was down like 3 goals in that game in the fourth quarter. And had to make a big comeback. So it's the number 1 seed has been pushed in those games. They just always seem to win. Yeah. Which I guess that's why they're the number 1 team. But it is maybe it's just the luck of it's just a numbers thing. It's just a small sample size that the 2 seed gets upset a little bit more. But at least in the quarterfinal, I would say. In the first round, but I don't know.
Stony Brook almost took down Virginia.
Stony Brook for Virginia, yeah, good one. I'm trying to think, was Maryland the one? Did they ever have a real
beat Cuse in 2011?
Yeah, that was the upset one.
Sorry.
I'm trying to think of when Maryland was the 1 seed. Did they ever really get? Not really, because it's Tillman in the quarterfinals. That's their.
Yeah, I mean, the Sigma, pretty much.
The closest as the number 1 seed. The closest that Maryland got to being upset as the 1, not counting the Final Four, was Robert Morris. that Robert Morris played him really close in that first round game in 2018. I don't. Being the 1 feels like just such you said it feels like such an advantage compared to the 2. But it also does feel like there's been plenty of times where the 1 could have lost. And they haven't. Duke in 2023 against Delaware. That was a first round game, and that game was down to the wire. So maybe this is the year. I don't know. I think whoever the number 1 team is, I don't think we'll be viewing them as strongly as we have the number 1 team the past couple of years. Maybe it's an undefeated Richmond. In which case, maybe that would just be because of the name. But I don't know. There was certainly Notre Dame in 24 and Maryland in 22 felt pretty, dominating and hard to see them losing. All right. Let's have some fun. So, along these lines, I was thinking about a segment for our kind of, our jovial segment of the week. And I was thinking, we could do, what's the best outcome for all these teams? We talk, ceiling. What's the best outcome? And as I was thinking about it, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, winning the national title, you go on down for the top 8-9 teams, you're like, yeah, maybe they could win the national championship. So then I'm like, what if we had some fun here and just flipped it up? Listen, again, full disclosure, much like last week, this is a joke. we're having fun here. we're not manifesting anything. We're not preying on anybody's downfall. We're just having fun. We're gonna have some laughs. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take maybe the top 8, 9, 10 teams, and we're gonna say what's the funniest way their season could end. Just if you had to draw it up, we're sitting there in a month and a half and their season's over, and we're just like, wow, that was hilarious. And we're all just sitting around laughing with each other. What does it look like? So, Safe, I'll get us started here just as an idea of where we're kind of going to go here. And then I'll, throw the floor over to you. But just for everyone, if you're, I feel like it's an illustrative example is better than a further explanation here. So I'm just going to dive right into it. The funniest way Notre Dame's season can end is that they lose 15-5 to Ohio State in the first round.
First round,
just totally flip it from last year.
Absolutely, no, and it's regional. How they pick the teams because of region for the first round. I could definitely see them not giving Ohio State a seed, and so that they could play Notre Dame. Which would just be just delicious. The irony, the poetic justice of it all, just hilarious. Absolutely. No, I really love that one. I see kind of thought it. I did have one. Can I just throw it in there just so I don't lose it? No, so I think the funniest end of the season would be Virginia winning the championship. I say this because of the quote after the Maryland game.
Lars,
it's just like nobody else but Lars believed, and they actually pulled it. It's just like a team that's just all offense and just go for it. And it's somehow like kind of like the Carolina.
If Lars,
the Carolina run, so I'm thinking of 2000.
If they win the championship in Scott Stadium as like an unseeded Cinderella type thing, yes. Lars could be a cult leader in that moment.
They should build the statue after everything they said.
Like he legitimately would have cult leader power in that moment. Like they would carry him off. Like they would saint him on the field.
Oh my God, dude! That's what I'm just saying. Like it just the harmony of it all, just him. That it didn't nobody believe, and just like that man deserves his revenge if they can pull it off, like, and it would just be I think it's delicious. Whatever I kind of thought it was the first thing I thought of, but I just had to throw that out so that I didn't forget. I mean, kind of on that same like the funniest would be also Duke winning. After like not talking, especially me, almost like the Yale thing. If Duke winning, like, and after I said, like, I don't even think I'm gonna make the tournament, and it's just like a doubt touchdown, John Danowski at your risk, kind of maybe lost his fastball. Who knows about the succession, and it just like ran through a title run that was just like the most surprising of their title runs. The most, the least heralded team, the least talked about team of the last 6 years for Duke. If they were able to turn it around and win it, like, to me that would be hilarious because it'd just be like,
yeah,
Yamaha did it. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, some other ones. I'm trying to Cuse losing either the quarterfinal or the championship, one of the two. Just like losing in the quarterfinal so they don't get back to the Final Four, or getting over the hump to the championship and then losing the championship would be, I mean, maybe a little sad, but also would kind of be very funny.
But I was thinking like sweep the ACC and like a first round, just like an absolute, just like, come out of nowhere.
Quarterfinal loss.
Maryland
beat Maryland in the quarterfinal somehow.
Exactly. That's just like see that they definitely don't want to see.
I've got one on these lines. Princeton finally beats Cornell so they've beaten Maryland already. They've beaten Syracuse. Maybe they beat Syracuse and Cornell in the tournament, and then turn it around and lose on Memorial Day. They finally beat Cornell, like beat Syracuse in the quarter, beat Cornell in the quarterfinal, beat Syracuse in the semifinal, and then just.
That's how it would happen. They play the afternoon game, play Richmond in the championship. Richmond went, small team Richmond, kind of home field advantage. Cinderella, the powerful Cinderella. I don't really even Cinderella, but just name wise.
Carolina's got to be losing the quarter. No,
first round. First round.
Just first round. It just fails on launch.
Yeah, first round or a blown fourth quarterfinal loss.
Yeah, they've had some of those. The quarterfinal is usually the round that like gets them. I think back to some of those, like the Denver one. I remember in Indianapolis, so they had like a 4 or 5 goal lead. Then they lost to Maryland a couple years later. They got blown out. Yeah, like just a non-entity game. Just doesn't even, again, failure to launch entirely.
Harvard would be a first round loss, just because like if they
Harvard does the face-off thing turns around.
Bites them at the worst moment.
Yeah, they go like 5 of 25, or they play Cuse. They play Cuse again, and it's the exact same game.
Yeah,
they win 5 of the face-offs. That would be. Listen, I got to do it. I got to poke the phone on myself. There's 2 ways this goes. Maryland turns it around somehow in Big Ten play, like goes on this big run to the Big Ten championship, and then loses to Ohio State like 4-3. just the most like
anti-offense game ever.
Like a man up, like 1 minute man up to tie the game, like late and just can't do anything. That would be one, or the ultimate one if we're being real. They get in somehow, they go on a Carolina-like run to the championship, and then they just lose on Memorial Day again. Just all that. just to lose on Memorial Day. That'd be one.
I was going to say the other funniest thing is that they essentially win, lose. So they're 5-6 after the Hopkins. But so that means they have to win the Big Ten championship, and they lose to like Michigan in the Big Ten championship. So they lose to AQ and Buffalo 500. And like,
wait, they're 3-4. So if they'd be they would probably have to win 2 Big Ten. They'd be 7-7.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, they win. So like they end the season 5-6. And so it's
in that case, I think they'd have to play 2 Big Ten games. They have to play the quarterfinal too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They would make it to the championship game of the Big Ten.
No, I get it, but I'm saying in that case they wouldn't be below 500. They'd be 500.
Oh, but if they I thought if they lost, because they would win 2.
They're 5-6. That's what. Which listen, they wouldn't get in. They would not get in at 7-7.
They get the big round. They get the first round bye. They win that. They lose the championship. That's it.
If they get the first round, that would be tough. They get the first round bye, and now that also does open the potential though that they win their next 4 games, so they'd be 7-4. They lose the first game to finish 7-5, and they're the last team in the field, which would just destroy the Crosse Twitter. People would just be
right. It's so right.
It's an outrage. I think on your Virginia thing, the key, they have to beat Duke just to top it off. Yeah. This Duke goes on this kind of unheralded run, and then they spit the bit by losing to Virginia. That'd be deeply funny. Georgetown not losing the rest until quarterfinal weekend, but somehow finding a way to lose another quarterfinal would be
Sisyphean.
Which honestly at this point feels potentially likely.
It's the turnaround.
I can absolutely see that happening.
Got out a win against Denver to win an AQ.
With AQ, beat Duke
road win in the first round, just like they did last year. They played Virginia in the quarters, and Virginia's on the way to the championship.
Or Notre Dame, or somebody else. Oh man, I think we covered all of them. I don't think there's any funny one for Hopkins really. They don't feel like I don't know what the funny Hopkins ending to the season is. I can picture a sad Hopkins ending, like which I'm not gonna mention. I'm not gonna go there. You got the J sweatshirt on safe. Like I can picture a very predictable. I can picture a sad ending. Not really sure.
Buckets go 0-3 the rest of the way. Finish 2-3. Finish 2-3, losing the first round of 10 tournament. I go down to see it.
See like that. That again, is that funny or is that sad? Like that feels kind of sad. Like that's just like, man, that was wow. It feels more sad. Yeah. Like I think most of theirs would just be either sad or predictable. Flip side for Ohio State, it might be just the Notre Dame thing happening again. That this time at Notre Dame, that might not.
I think obviously they wouldn't take that over a title, but beating Notre Dame at home, and Notre Dame's the seeded team in the first round, even if they lost their quarters, that maybe that's at least a somewhat satisfying accomplishment. But speaking of Ohio State,
They gotta get to the Final Four this year.
Up,
I don't think I said they have to get to the Final Four.
Jake,
I
it's
don't
all
think,
that. You know, it's all. Go. You want to go into it, or
let's do
we got
games.
a couple games? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what games are you looking most? What game
Go
you most?
kind of call back to originally where we were kind of talking about Cuse and Duke. You were like, oh, Duke ever won at the Dome? They did win one, 6-1. Syracuse is 6-1 at the Dome against Duke, but they did lose
What was the one?
2023 overtime loss, 13-4.
Oh, that was the game where Duke hit like 7 pipes.
Yep.
Cuse was an underdog in that one, and it was one of those where it's like I remember that was the game where we first realized it. The Duke had never won the Dome. It's like that's not true.
Yeah, this can't be possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I remember that game. Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say, last year, it was last year.
The last one was the one we went live for.
Yeah, I was thinking about. I was like,
that's like 10-4.
I think of my God, that was amazing.
I need to go back.
Are we underselling how good the Duke team is? Like,
I need to go back and watch that again. So it's on YouTube if you want to watch. Like, or I think I like do a double take when Save mentions this. I'm like, what? and then we kind of talk ourselves into it. It's like, by the way, Syracuse is up 4-0. It never got any better.
But yeah, that game definitely. I'm thinking of. I kind of. I mean, maybe it's just for the bit, but Virginia Notre Dame, because for a little while Lars had it going against Notre Dame.
No, that was the circular ACC. Notre Dame couldn't beat Virginia. Virginia couldn't beat Duke, and Duke couldn't beat Notre Dame.
Yes,
and it just all looped around each other. Now, since then, Notre Dame's. I mean, what's Notre Dame won now? 4 in a row. This one is like it's a game of like it's a series of runs. If I look it up, hang on, do they not have it on there?
Notre Dame doesn't even have a history of something.
Virginia doesn't look like they have it.
We need a uniform schedule page and a history. Could be a mandatory.
It will be the best ones are the ones that actually have like Wikipedia pages. There's a few like Maryland, Virginia has one.
Oh yeah,
Wikipedia is just like Virginia, Maryland lacrosse rivalry or Cornell, Princeton lacrosse rivalry. Last year, Virginia lost to Notre Dame 7-12. In 2024, they played twice. Virginia lost both. The second one they lost by 9 goals. That was the ACC tournament. 2023 they lost the NCAA tournament. So Notre Dame has won 4 in a row over Virginia. Before that, Virginia had won at least they beat them in 23 twice. They beat them in 22 once. They beat them in 21 once. They beat them in 2019, I believe, twice. That's 7. And 2018, Notre Dame had beat them. So Virginia had won 7 in a row from 2019 to 2023. Then Notre Dame won the Final Four in 23 and has won, counting that, 4 in a row since. I mean, look, Virginia needs 2 ACC wins at a minimum. I think 3, which if they win 2, they get in the ACC tournament, you figure. So then they could get the 3rd in the ACC tournament. I mean, can Virginia get Notre Dame in a... I guess this is the problem with this. Look, you said it. Virginia, all offense. I mean, it's all... Like, the offense is... McCabe Millen is leading the country, I believe, in points per game. And is not, like, really in the conversation for anything, like awards or first one or anything like that. His number... Look, there are still some kind of He has 30. He has 31 assists. He has 50 points. He does have 27 turnovers, which is a lot. I mean, like this thing with McCabe, it's a lot of volume. He's shooting 29%. He has 19 goals, but he's shooting 29%. He has 31. He has 31 assists, but he has 27 turnovers. He's playing well. Now, Brendan, on the other hand, he's got 20 goals, and he's shooting 32%. He has 24 assists to 12 turnovers as a freshman, which is I tweeted it out. The UVA stocks I had preseason, a little shaky. The Brendan Millen stocks are, I mean, it's just going to appreciate in value for 4 years here. I mean, yeah, they're putting up numbers. They're 9th in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency. Virginia used to be able to, as you meant, like they used to be able to run with Notre Dame in a way that basically no one really could. Because Notre Dame's whole thing is if you try and run with it, they just chew you up and they spit you out. They're so buttoned up and they're so well coached and they're so precise that if you try and throw, like teams trying to throw in curveballs in Notre Dame just doesn't work. They just run through that. But Virginia always used to find a way to be able to push it against them. And also what Virginia used to be particularly well with, Virginia just always used to own the matchups. They used to feel comfortable putting their shorties on islands against Notre Dame midfielders and winning. And they used to feel really comfortable because Notre Dame doesn't really slide or switch matchups, just going at their guys. And I guess the question is here is, can Virginia really run at Notre Dame and have success in this matchup? Because it feels like that's the route to win. Notre Dame's probably a defensive-oriented team this year. If Virginia's going to win, it's got to be like Virginia's not going to be Notre Dame 9-8.
No.
If Virginia wins, it's got to be a high-scoring game. It's got to be kind of crazy. But I don't know. This is where we get into Virginia not quite feeling like Virginia. Whenever Virginia's really tried to push it this year, it feels like it kind of falls apart. The Hopkins game, the best example. They gave Hopkins like 4 or 5 goals in that second half through trying to push too much in transition, not getting back in transition defense, and just being too sloppy. And Virginia, it sounds evident, like Virginia has to play their best game of the year here. They have to play their most, like they have to push it 100%. Virginia's got to be willing to, risk it for the victory. I just don't know if Virginia's going to be able to do that in a way that isn't bringing themselves undone. And for a Notre Dame offense that might struggle to score 6-on-6, it feels like the worst thing to do would just be give them transition goals and layups. So I don't know. I can see how Virginia has to win. I don't really see how it happens, though, is the difficulty. I don't know if I see how this plays out. That's not a Notre Dame's goalie has a bad day. Virginia maybe wins 2/3 of the face-off, something like that. Assuming all things being equal, I know how Virginia has to win. I just don't know if that's really feasible.
Got to get possessions. Greenspan's got to, maybe roll, maybe with Griff Meyer also like just doing something to three-headed monster, throw Mets in there. Just they have to I think they just got to feed that offense. And I always kind of feel like I totally hear what you're saying. There's a fine line between reckless and constantly pushing it. But I think for Virginia, they'd rather have the atmosphere, that kind of up and down play, and they'll live with the turnovers. It's kind of been like Lars's legacy at Virginia. But that's kind of how they got through those growing pains and became that team that run peak Virginia under Lars era. So that's what I feel like. It's got to get more comfortable. Maybe tone down the turnovers as much, but that aggressiveness, always kind of attacking, is probably their best way of winning these type of games. And what your point is right. You maybe expose yourself for transition goals, but if you can make these type of defenses uncomfortable, just getting them, just not in place or pushing it more, I think it does go more to their advantage. Just the offensive weapons they have.
I agree. I think they have. I'm not saying they have to do it. Like that's my worry is just that they used to be able to do it in a way where the balance tilted in their favor. Where
Yeah,
on that, like they came out ahead by they caused you to fail clears. They got transition goals, but they were also so when it worked, they found a way, and this was I think just it was the personnel they had in the middle of the field, guys like
that's what we're
Conrad
gonna
and
say. They had that horse.
like they could push just much, but they always could be responsible, and they always had the athletes to get back. I I just don't. I haven't seen that from them in a while, where the balance actually tilts towards them in terms of the chaos that they can kind of create, but not giving up opportunities on the clear. It was better against Maryland, where they were able to, I think, generate some transition and not really give up as much. The Hopkins game, that was the one that's just like it felt like Hopkins was down in that game and out. Virginia just started giving them like transition opportunities and it got them back in the game. And that's kind of been their problem for the past 2 years is now difference this year is so last year we saw them do this where it felt like Lars decided we know we don't have as much talent. We're not the team we were, so we need to hammer the transition. We need to play at a crazy pace. And eventually it felt like they realized we just can't, this isn't working. Like the opportunities we are giving up on the back end is just so much that it's the balance is not working. And by the end of the year, they actually became much more of a kind of slow it down 6-on-6 team. It feels like this year Lars has decided, like, fuck it, like we gotta do it. And it has led to the offense, which also is better 6-on-6, to be fair. But it has led the offense is better. Like leaning into that and being willing to embrace it, as you say, has improved the offense. It's just the defense is, you know, to put it like it's just not, it's not very good. It's been a little better of late. I guess you could say. I mean, they've been below 30% and like, but I mean, 28% against Utah, 28% against Maryland, 30% against Towson. It's okay. It's not great. Part of this also is goalie play. The goalie play they've gotten has just been really kind of up and down. Jake Merrick has been, I guess you could say, better. The last 2 games against Utah and Dartmouth, he saved 27 out of 44. That's pretty darn good numbers. How does that look against Notre Dame, who's a really good shooting team? I'm not sure. I guess one thing this is the test where Virginia's defense, which Virginia's off-ball defense can be and has been like a serious problem. But we have seen Notre Dame this season, and even going back last season, there are moments in games where Notre Dame's offense will go quiet. They might have a bad quarter. They might have a prolonged stretch where the offense doesn't work. Virginia has to be able to. They have to force that. Their defense cannot be such a liability that Notre Dame never has there. Like Notre Dame's offense is probably going to give you a dry spell. You have to take it. You can't create offense for them by sliding to the wrong guy or ball watching or things like that. And maybe if Notre Dame does have that quiet quarter with your offense, maybe that can be a 4-goal, 5-goal run. So like that, you got to take what they're going to give you, basically. If Notre Dame's going to give you a stretch where their offense isn't super successful, you need to, one, capitalize on that by not creating offense for them, and then 2, scoring as much, like do the opposite of what Maryland did against Penn State, where Maryland's defense held Penn State scoreless for like 35 minutes. And in that stretch, Maryland scored like 2 goals, 6-on-6, and just didn't capitalize on the opportunity. Like you have to, and Virginia has the offense to do that. They have the offense to where if Notre Dame goes quiet, Virginia's offense can capitalize on it. I don't know. It's out there for Virginia. It's not. I picture the path to victory. I struggle picturing them executing it. But it's not as if there isn't a way to win this game for them. They just have to go out and execute it. And We'll see. It's been a long time since Virginia's won one of these games. They've had opportunities, they've been close, but it's been a while since Virginia last beat a top 20 team. I don't know, maybe Albany or Towson last year. The last time they beat a Big Ten or ACC opponent was the Final Four against Hopkins in 2024. That's coming up on 2 years now. So if Virginia's going to if Lars is right that they turn their season around, and that they're going to get back in the mix, it's got to happen now. Their next 4 games they got to win at least 2 of them.
I guess the other game, we kind of already touched upon it earlier when we delved into both. But yeah, Harvard, North Carolina. I feel like that's just going to be an interesting game for both. Won't make or break either season, but definitely like kind of solidifies Harvard's for real, and for North Carolina, just like more of the same, just consistently winning big time games against tough opponents. Their strength of schedule should rise as well. It's already pretty impressive. So things would be important for both. Maybe something that differentiates, 2 or 3 seed from just kind of a mid-seeded team. So, like I said, I think North Carolina, if they do their thing in ACC play, going into Selection Sunday with only a loss to Princeton, I think maybe they could have an outside chance at number 1. There's weeks of games ahead of us, but it's been like they seem to have answered every bell, risen to the occasion, but for the Princeton game. So be interesting to see if it continues in Severn, Maryland. How far is that from you? Where's Severn? Western Severn State?
No, it's I think it's south of me. It's near Annapolis, I believe. Yeah, Severn to me, I could go to this game if I want. I don't.
Is this where Wilkes coaches? Isn't there a school? Severn? I keep calling Severn.
It's Severn. It's Severn, Maryland. Yeah. This is where Wilkes. Yeah, this is where he coaches now.
Yeah, I was gonna say the private school.
What is this? This is, I'm guessing, at the private school there. So that's this is probably like 20 minutes from me, honestly. Again, I don't the ticket price.
You got to go to a CSE. That'd be great.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I'm gonna give you a immediate pass.
That after what happened 2 weeks ago, yeah, I think I'm sure they're itching to give me a media pass.
Wait, taking a czar?
You're with the Crosse? No, College Crosse.
That was Ryan. That was Ryan.
It's a totally different guy.
Complaints reset
to Ryan D29.
We tried to get him to calm down, but he was like, "No, I gotta do it."
He would insist. Yeah, this is pretty close to me, so I don't think I'll go, but it is very close to me. It's in the same county, so to give you an idea. So I think there's a question here is, I guess that we're answering is with Harvard. My question is are they having the same issues that they did? Is last year kind of coming back to the fold for Harvard, where the face-off play is becoming kind of an anchor on their hopes, where Graham Stevens last year was, I thought, really good. Particularly, he made a lot of big saves. He made the saves they needed him to make. But he kind of could be like, there's nothing against him. Just the level of the defense let him down to where there was only so well that he could play. This year, he is playing exceptionally. Like, he's making all the big saves. He's saving 2 or 3 goals every game. But it's the defense kind of receding in quality to where there's only so much he can do and the face-off play is becoming an anchor again. And there's no better test of that than going up against Brady Wambach. To where, look, against John Mullen, Harvard, the best face-off game they've had contextually in years. They won over 50% of the face-offs against Mullen. Wambach is probably the only tougher test out there than John Mullen. You don't need to win 50% with that offense. You need to be at 45, at no worse than 40. So that's kind of my question for Harvard. On the flip side, my question for North Carolina is more, and I think this is maybe where I meant to I was a little more inarticulate, I guess you could say, in my kind of, contrarianism on Saturday. But I guess this is what I want to say is UNC in adjusted offensive efficiency this year is basically identical to where they were last year. And if you look at their unadjusted offensive efficiency, UNC has been above 30% in only one of their last 5 games. They were 28% against Penn, 24% against Princeton, 38% against Brown, 27% against Penn State, and 27% against Army. Adjusted rates for this against Penn State and Army, those are still 2 pretty good games, like 32 and 34, pretty good, but they are below their season average. And Penn and Princeton were sub 30%, even adjusted offensive efficiencies. And I guess the point that I'm making there is, did you not maybe think UNC's offense, for where UNC is as a team at 8-1, did you not think the offense would maybe be a bit further along? It does feel a bit. I mean, the offense is very good. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, but it does feel like for the talent they have, 8th feels a bit. I don't know. I feel like I thought they'd be a bit further along.
Yeah, I can see maybe. They don't have much of a playmaker in terms of like addition besides Owen. But in terms of putting the ball in the back of the net, they're doing what we wanted. In terms of like other people got we got
shot disparity is much better. Like,
absolutely, other people got to eat. And Brevin Wilson's like putting in work, 14 goals, second on the team. Anthony Rayo, Mason, 10. Luke Bear, 2 goals away from being double digits. Gary Merrill, 3 goals away from being double digits.
Safe, get this. Last year, after Duffy and Petro, only 5 guys on UNC had more than 30 shots. There are 4 guys this year who have more than 30 shots already. And then there are 2 in Gary Merrill and Macaluso have 27. So they're going to have, but like, look, those Wilson, Rayo, Bear, those guys are going to get to, they're at 30, they're at 40 shots now. They'll get to 60, 70, 80 by the end of the year. But so this gets to my kind of question of with UNC's offense. Can it all come together? Because what's helping them right now is that in basically at every kind of point of the season, they've had a different midfield line chip in and lead the way. Early in the year was the first midfield line. Like Mason Suchek, early in the season was kind of the main guy. And he had 5 goals in their first 2 games. He had 10 points in their first 3 games against Jacksonville, High Point, and Iona. Since then, 6 goals in their first 3 games. He has 4 goals in their last 6 games. So he's kind of cooled off a good bit. Then you have Wilson's kind of been pretty solid, and look, he plays with Duffy and Petro on the first as the third attackman. So you would expect and hope that as the third attackman, he gets a certain amount of production and fills the net up. Crap. My computer's being slow as I'm trying to make this point. Come on now. All right. So that's Suchek on the first midfield line. But then you have On the after Suchek, kind of like Macaluso, another guy. He had he had 3 goals in their first 4 games. He had 3 goals against Princeton and Brown. He's been held pointless in their past 2 games. Ty English, kind of sort of been doing everything more so. Has obviously been featured as a defensive midfielder this year. Then you have the first midfield was more impactful early in the season. It's kind of faded late. Let me get to the freshman midfield line. Anthony Rayo had early in the season had 3 goals in their first 4 games, or 3 goals in their first 5 games. Then he had 2 goals against Princeton and Brown. He has 5 goals in their past 2 games. He had a hat trick against Penn State, and he had 2 goals and an assist against Army. Gary Merrill, the kind of crown jewel piece of this recruiting class, took him into his 3rd game to get on the board. He had 2 goals and an assist against Iona. He had 3 goals through their first 8 games of the season. He had a hat trick last week against Army. That was his coming out party. So early in the year was the first midfield line. The past 2 weeks, it's been the freshman midfield line. I guess to me, if I feel like for this team to get where they want to go, I think they need both midfield lines running at the same time. I think they need that freshman, and this is where I would maybe argue for jumbling the midfield lines up and maybe getting different guys in the mix, just to kind of diversify the scoring a bit. But they have solved the issue of only 2 guys are like involved in the offense. They have a lot more guys involved now. The question is the consistency. Can they get all those guys playing well at the same time? Early in the year was the first midfield, the more experienced guys. The freshmen have kind of come on of late. It does feel like, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but we know freshmen can sometimes hit a wall late in the year. They're probably going to need that more experienced midfield line to come late. But can those freshmen keep it going through the end of the year? I think this is another test for UNC of, can they get both midfield lines playing the same way? Because I think if they get consistency from the midfield, they can roll 2 midfield lines that produce. I believe this team probably has most of its issues figured out. Their offense is it's top 10. Obviously with Wambach, the way he's playing, exceptionally well. The defense is solid, though goaltending is, again, that's my ultimate question with this team. I just don't know. 30th, Josh Marcus at 30th%. I don't know if that's going to get you to a Final Four. But if they can figure out getting these midfield lines rolling, I think they have the offense figured out. They have the face-off play, and that combo is just going to be really tough to beat. And their defense is good. So I think to me, it's a matter of 2 kind of with both of these teams is which sort of question mark performs best. Can Harvard win faceoffs? Limit Wambach? And can UNC get some? Because Harvard's going to score. Like, Harvard is going to score. That offense is. I don't think UNC's offense is good. Is UNC's defense, or UNC's defense is good rather? But is UNC's defense good enough combined with Marcus, who's been up and down and more down than he's been up? Even if Harvard has, UNC's game against Army, UNC won 12-11. Army scored on 11 of 40 possessions. And UNC won. So against Army, Wambach won. We talked about it. 78% of the faceoffs. UNC had 5 more possessions than Army. Army scored on 11 of 40 possessions. So they scored on 28% of their possessions. Harvard is scoring on about 40% of their possessions. If Harvard gets 40 possessions at their normal rate, that's 16 goals. Now, I think UNC's defense is good, but Marcus was below 50% against Army. If he's below 50% against Harvard, and you're talking Harvard's offense. Like Harvard to me just needs to be in the ballpark here. And that offense, I think it's going to hum. Like to me, UNC's won. Take out the Brown game where they were excellent, but Brown's not very good. They won with 12 against Army, 10 against Penn State. They lost with 9. They would have needed 12 to beat Princeton, and they beat Penn with 11. Can UNC beat Harvard with 11 goals or 12 goals?
I mean,
I don't know.
it'd be tougher. I think that'd be more like a 14-10 kind of game. I could see them winning, like where they kind of holding an opponent to 9-10. Like I think they're capable of it, but if the face-off advantage is not even 45-40% winning, like I could see it get kind of uglier for them. So I think
to me it's the number of possessions, because again, 40 possessions for Army, that's 16 goals if they Harvard performs their normal level.
Yeah.
Penn State had 9 fewer possessions than UNC and lost by a goal. Penn State only had 28 possessions in the game against UNC. That is microscopically low. However, 40% offensive efficiency out of 28 possessions is 12 goals. Do you think UNC's defense over a long enough, if Harvard gets 40 possessions, do you think UNC's defense can hold up against Harvard's offense?
Harvard gets 40 possessions? No.
Harvard gets 40 possessions.
No, I think that'd be plus 16, 17 goals.
That's the thing. It's like, do you think UNC's defense can hold Harvard below their normal? Like, that's, I think the question here is, we all believe that if UNC keeps the ball away from Harvard, they can keep their goal total down. Do you think if UNC has to play defense against Harvard, can they keep Harvard's offense quiet?
No.
Okay. Then I think that to me gets into the heart of the matter is Wambach has to be excellent, or UNC's offense has to show a different gear than they've shown in the past. Like they've been able to win with dominant possession game by Wambach, really good offense, not quite great, and just good enough defense. That's kind of been their formula. Dominate the possessions, ride really effectively, win the faceoffs, force some turnovers. The offense is steady, solid, and they've been able to kind of win at that kind of clip week after week. This feels like a game where their offense has to be either their offense has got to keep up in a shootout, or they have to keep Harvard to like less than 35 possessions. So I think that's what makes this game really interesting. Is I think one of these two teams has to really show us something a little bit different. Like UNC, this is where the offense has to be the Carolina offense we've been expecting. I think UNC is gonna have to score 14 or 15 goals to win this game. I'm not saying they can't, but I'm saying like the past couple weeks that hasn't been the formula. It's been 12, 10, 9, 11. Again, they beat 19 against Brown, but they scored 17 against Hopkins. I think it's got to be something closer to the Hopkins kind of game in terms of how their offense plays. But even in that one, they were plus 10 possession against Hopkins. Hopkins scored 9 goals on 34 possessions. 12 goals on 34 possessions is 35% for Harvard. 40% would be like 14. They'd still be in that game. If Harvard gets the ball, like I think this offense is going to score.
So I felt in Penn was able to control the face-off, had pretty decent showing on offense in terms of like when they after the first quarter they're able to kind of get settled into their 6-on-6s. Very good defense. As long as they didn't let Harvard get loose on transition, they were pretty solid on 6-on-6. But when Harvard got the ball, they were pretty much scoring like 35-40%, because it's just like it was that good of an offense. So maybe they weren't getting the total number of possessions, but that efficiency and lethality was able to stiff arm Penn and keep them at bay. So it's you keep the Harvard 35 and below, you're probably with a top 15, top 10-ish defense. Like and you're able to get to like 10 or 11, that's kind of the winning formula against Harvard. Harvard could be even more efficient than normal. So, they could, but I think, if you can get them into 30, 35 possessions and
you got to keep, you got to, I mean, their last, how many possessions they have in the Penn game? They had dude, they had 28 possessions in the Penn game.
Yeah.
They scored 12 goals.
Sometimes, it was obviously like some interest I had on DraftKings on the game too. But throughout the game, I was like, Penn needs to have the ball because they were struggling on offense, efficient enough to put some points on the board. But it was like, if Harvard got the ball, there was a 50-50 chance we're going to score.
The level that this offense is playing at is, honest to God, astonishing. Like, let's just do some, in honor, we'll call this the Duke 22. Is Duke as good as 2022 Maryland Award for potentially, way too early overreactions? Harvard's offensive efficiency is at 43.2%. The difference between Harvard and Notre Dame in third is 4.2%. That is the difference between Notre Dame and like Johns Hopkins in 12th. It's actually greater than Notre Dame and the next 10 best teams. 2025 Cornell adjusted offensive efficiency. Safe, take a guess.
2025, 39.4.
41.9.
41.9.
So Harvard is about 1%, a little better. 2024 Notre Dame.
42.
Close. 43.
Yeah.
Harvard is right now, again, at 43.2. 2023 Virginia with Schellenberger, Dixon, and Cormier.
41.
Close again. 42.6. 22 Terps.
43.
Very close again. 42.2.
Mm.
If they were, I'm curious what they were before the last two games of the season. Their last two games of the season, the Cornell game, they were 21%. They had a stretch there where their first two games were above. In the middle of the season, they eclipsed 50% against Virginia and Michigan. Here's basically what it is. They were above 40% for like 7 straight weeks until the Virginia game in the quarterfinal where they were 39 and then down to 32 against Princeton and 25% against Cornell. All right, we'll do one more. We'll do the 2019 Penn State Nittany Lions.
Ooh. Yeah, 43.
43.4. So Harvard, through about midway through the season, is on the pace of the 2019 Penn State team.
Just
which is insane.
Oh, the Rock Show? Yeah.
The 2019 Penn State, by the way, here's an idea. This is astonishing. Let me just get the exact numbers here. Just for 53, 41, and 41. So that's 135 possessions. Safe, what do you think Penn State's offensive efficiency was in the NCAA tournament in 2019?
I think 45, because even though the Yale game was bad, they scored a lot when they finally did get the ball.
It was 46.6%.
They were fine.
Their offense was better in the tournament than it was over the course of the season. The Loyola game is the most astonishing. They beat Loyola. They scored on 21 of 41 possessions in that quarterfinal game.
They were a rock show. It was one of the greatest teams. Like, obviously, it didn't go all the way, but
they scored
still an amazing team.
They scored on over half of their possessions in a quarterfinal game. Yeah, they lost to Yale and they scored 17.
Pat Spencer led like Loyola team, who scored 14 in their over. Remember that game was like intermittently like the broadcast shut off because of lightning, and it was just like
the broadcast shut off and you came like Loyola. The broadcast shuts off and Loyola's up by like 5, and you're like, wow, this is crazy. It comes back and Penn State has the lead. It's like,
and Penn State has another gear. Like it was great to watch it.
It was like 7 minutes.
It's just like a game lost to history. It's crazy they didn't still have this footage of it that they could have like.
I think
it's got to be in the library.
I think if you look up the highlights, maybe. Though I don't know. You know why? Because I'll look up after and see if they have the highlights. Because Mac O'Keefe scored like 9 goals in that game, and there's a video of like all of his goals except one of the goals like isn't included, which I believe it might be because it was when the broadcast like okay, yeah, here's Loyola led 6-3 with 2:31 left in the first quarter. Penn State would score 7 goals over the next 10 minutes of game time to go up 10-6. This is insane. 2:31 of first quarter. Loyola 6, Penn State 3. 2:13 left, second quarter. So basically about a quarter of game time. Penn State 14-7. Yeah. They scored like a goal a minute. And then Loyola got it back with 2:16 left in the third quarter to Pat Spencer scores like 5 goals in a row and gets it back to 16-14. Penn State scores 5 more goals.
Yeah.
That team was insane. It's unbelievable. If you ever want to know, like, Brady Wambach is awesome. No question. He's elite. Like 100%. No denying it. He is like he's clearly the best faceoff guy in the country right now. No question. I'm seeing the comparisons of Wambach to like TD Ierlan or Trevor, and I'm like, I'm gonna need to see a little bit more until I get there. Like TD put that Yale team on his back.
Oh yeah.
Like I mean, it was and look, they also played. Look, the offense played great too. I mean, that entire 2019 tournament was just a deluge of goals. Yale beat Penn in one of the best games we've ever seen. But what TD did in that tournament was insane. Gerald Arceri was a elite faceoff guy, like an All-American. That was part of what made that Penn State offense so great was they had a great faceoff guy to go with it. In addition to that offense. And he won over the course of 2 games because Yale beat, of course, Penn State lost 2 games that year, and both of them were to Yale. Over the course of both of those games, TD won 49 of 72 faceoffs against one of the best faceoff guys. He won 68, more than 2/3 against one of the best faceoff guys in the country. It's astonishing. It's absolutely astonishing. All right, we're going to finish up here. Our 5 good minutes for this week. Safe threw this to me. He DM'd me. I was caught off guard. Safe usually doesn't DM me like long form lacrosse thoughts. He'll throw me like a line or two there, a quip, but this was like a long form. I was like, wow. And so when this happened, I was like, I mean, I gotta throw him the ball and let him cook. So our 5 good minutes is going to be on the Ohio State offense. And Safe has the floor to get up here and do his thing with his thoughts, Safe's thoughts on how to fix the Ohio State offense.
Yeah, I didn't know if I was going to go with that. Atticus Finch or Saul Goodman or as a lawyer for the Ohio State Buckeyes. But Your Honor, members of the court, thank you for your time here. This case, it's not about what Ohio State lacks. It's about what Ohio State is and whether they're misallocating their strengths. We already know the top line figures, and they look great. Number 2, adjusted defense, I believe, adjusted defensive efficiency, top 3. Yeah. Top 5, offense, face-off, adjusted efficiency, and I believe top 3 or 4 for save percentage efficiency, adjusted save percentage efficiency. Title level defense, more than a suitable enough face-off, and a star goalie, and something that you can. But what they lack, as we all know, is the offense. And now my thesis is that, as you kind of know, this is why I started thinking of it. It was like 2 weeks ago. You said that like State's wasting a national championship level defense this year, and I was like, you know what, it's right. And I feel like I think what the mismatch is, it's something kind of we always harp about, like how to say, methodical or patient offense, but this year more than so, it's just not working. I mean, they're just like a bottom quartile, bottom third of all Division I and adjusted offensive efficiency. That's not going to cut it. And my thing is just like, I don't think that Ohio State needs to get reckless, but I think they need to like kind of almost imitate that Rutgers, peak Rutgers team, 2021, 2022. And by that, I mean, it's just like attack at the right moments. Again, they're not, because someone
use the defense to fuel the offense, basically.
So the Razorbacks, 40 minutes of hell, like if anybody, millennials out there, because it kind of reminds me of, I don't want to always lean on movies, but it reminds me of the line from Jonah Hill in Moneyball. It was like, Billy, this is Chad Bradford. He's a relief pitcher. He's one of the most undervalued players in baseball. His defect is that he throws funny. I was like, we have an elite level like defense, a wonderful goalie, a face-off unit that's really bringing it this year. Their only defense, it's just a bottom quartile offense, and it's just like it feels like what I think. And that's why I won't talk with you about it, because it helped me articulate. It's like I think they need to like get offense wherever they can, but also specifically where they're best at. And I think it is
100%.
Transition. And it's not being reckless. It's just like maybe getting the ball to more 1 or 2 passes, and they're really good at clears. Like Ohio State, like the numbers kind of support this. Clearing, they're at 91.9%. Caused turnovers, 82 to 64 for opponents. Their weakness is turnovers is 149. The opponents have 159. So it's like kind of, but like it's like the offense is just not really great in the settle 6-on-6. And someone may argue like they do play fast. They have the 12th nationally in pace. And my thing is just like that reflects how quickly a team gets a shot off in a possession. Doesn't tell you whether those shots are coming in transition or against a fully set offense. They're shooting early, but they're shooting early in like settled offensive 6-on-6. And like that's not. You should do less of what you're not good at and more of what you are. And then I saw it in real life. Like I saw it at Ohio State, Georgetown. Georgetown, I'm not saying they were like going to control the game, but they were up 2-0. They had the ball. Momentum was gone. The crowd was into it. Like they feel like they had control of the game, and there was a shot ricocheted off the pipe. And forget who picked it up, but it was 1-2 passes over the midfield line, ran down, scored, and from that moment on, like Georgetown didn't score like another goal for like almost like 20 minutes, and that's when like Ohio State, slowly, ploddingly along, was able to chip away and get some goals and kind of took a little bit more control of the game. But it's just like that showed is like Ohio State does not need a juggernaut offense. They need marginal improvements. And if they can just get like 1 or 2 transition goals, ideally a half, but even if it's just like a game, that changes like the winning Overton window for them, because they haven't let anybody score more than 9 goals this entire season. Their problem more recently is like this: they're struggling to score 6 or 5. And then they've won, after the Notre Dame game. But like that's not a recipe for long-lasting success. And with this kind of defense, like you don't need to give a lot. You know what I mean? You just need to like get opportunistic goals, and that's why I feel like what they have with Khalif Hawker. I'm not saying like make it the Khalif Hawker show, but I was like just having him dodge on 6-on-6 situation, like you just have a Ferrari going through like a junkyard derby. Like it's not what you can do that.
The goal he scored against the goal he scored against Rutgers to tie the game.
The jump shot.
He created more separation with the first move. He created 3 yards to separate in a game where there was like no. It was a game in a phone booth. He created 3 yards of separation in one move.
Absolutely, and is that jump shot gave me like Kyle Harrison vibes. I loved it, and it's just like, and that's what I'm thinking of him. Like again, I don't need to make it the Khalif Hawker show, but he's one of the fastest. Like I saw, like his recruiting videos. He's like had like 4.65 at 18 years old. Like this kid is probably one of the fastest players, at least freshmen out there. And it's just like him and more of that. It's like the ball needs to be funneled. They already do a good job clearing, so I'm not worried about them. The turnover, a lot of turnovers happen with unsettled offense. So it's not like we're risking like throwing the ball away, because it's like, well, you're already throwing the ball away when you have it on offense. Like, why don't we try to like force the issue on teams? You have that great defense. You're causing the turnovers. You're getting the possessions. You have possession not to spare, but you're having an edge. Use that edge when the defense of the opponent is like least in a position to get settled in. And I think like being able to like kind of get it. Like I don't know about no strategy of like making Khalif maybe kind of play like a little midfield or something. But my point is just like you need to get the ball to those playmakers early, and that's the time to attack. And it's just like as long as there's a guy playing backup, if I was in McMyers, I'd be like, if you see it, go. As long as you got a guy back, because those are what I always hate the most. You kind of have to transition. Yeah. No one's there, and then all the goalie needs to do, as Quinn always says, all he needs to do is turn around, step foot, and he's closer to the ball. It's like as long as you like kind of have that philosophy, because that's what it is. It's like it's not Ohio State is structurally built to control possession, dictate tempo, but like what they're doing is playing too much of the game in the only phase where they're average. I need them to play in these unsettled, because that's where you get the space. That's kind of why I threw that 5-on-5 in overtime. After it gets like 3 or 4, it's like because it really is with lacrosse. Like the more it's so tough to score now. I'm like when you see it live, you really see like these teams are packed in. It's hard to get that penetration. You try to do these like crisp passes, but with the stick skills of the defenseman and the lack of they're like being behind X and like there's no room. And it's just like because everyone's there, they're really good. I think defense is really making a comeback, and just like where's there room where there's a lot of transition? Guys are like subbing in and out. Like you get people like that's the time where I feel like they should just be weaponizing tempo. And if they get the ball, and it should just be like more of a philosophical change. For like, hey, I trust my short stick defensemen. I trust them to get the ball over. It's like they can get it they're on like 1 or 2 passes it gets over, and it's just like we go. We're not waiting. If there's an opportunity, especially like if you can somehow get the ball to a Hawker in space, like those should like be music to any Ohio State fans' ears, because like him with room, like it's just going to be dangerous, I feel. And it's just like that creates opportunities for the actual shooters out there. It's just like Ohio State doesn't need to get 13, 14 goals a game. But if they can get these marginal goals, like at least 1 or 2 transition goals more a game, and just kind of, like I said, focusing on where their strength, and like kind of, not waiting for everything to be settled, and you have your man on the field. It's like there's opportunities. You trust this team on defense. They're elite. Like let the boys run a little bit, get the ball into your playmakers, get into space, and like I said, the main thing is just like attack and like I said, they just consistently need at a slightly higher level. Just that's it. It's all their offenses. It doesn't need to be explosive. Just kind of philosophical overhaul. And it's just because of that profile with a small increase, all of a sudden now your Overton window of goals is like 10 or 11. Ohio State consistently scores 10 or 11. That's a quarterfinal team, maybe a Final Four team with that defense.
Yeah.
And who knows what happens if you get there on tomorrow day. So that's my case. Ohio State needs to take advantage of the unsettled situations more, get the ball into the playmakers, Hawker, more explosive players in space, and trust them enough that hey, even if it is maybe a shot that the goalie saved, that's worth it because maybe you can get 2 or 3 extra goals per game in these type of situations. And it's like I said, as long as there's no wasted possession where there's nobody backing up the shot, and it's if they think of it more okay, you can kind of recognize if you're on attack, you're oh, we've got a turnover at midfield, they're coming, let me just get behind goal. One person just knows that instinctively to again free up space and make sure that if there is a shot that goes wide, that there's somebody to back up and keep that possession. And then, like I said, do less of what you're not good at and try to do more of and that's I think Hawker's a best example of that. His usage rate is extremely low, but his productivity is extremely high, which kind of shows you one or two things. Either he's not getting. Oh, sorry, I lost my note on that. He's either being used in the most favorable situations, or there's not enough of those situations being created. And I think it's the latter. And I think it's him in space, getting him the ball, and others are able to be weapons in that transition that you trust to go to the goal. And I think that's all we say. When you're attacking the goal, especially in transition, you got defense kind of playing playing off.
You have to make them commit. You have to make them make decisions. They have to make decisions. Whereas
force it on them. Don't give them time to get their personnel on the field. Don't wait for we got to get an offensive. Go. You got weapons. You got one of the best defenses in Division I right now. You don't need a lot. You don't need to be 2019 Penn State. No one's asking you to be that. It's just marginally better, taking more risks, and calculated risks at opportune times when there's an advantage. And if they're kind of one of those situations, and the more you get push it on them, maybe you get an offensive midi stuck on defense. And that also helps. You don't need to rush off and get, the Churchill defenseman that's kind of a replacement level on offense. You don't need to run him off so that, you save the offensive midi so that, he can get off and, to get the right personnel. You want the wrong personnel on when you're on offense for that. And if you can kind of push that and just, like I said, just be more aggressive in the right opportunities and don't wait. Don't take early shots in 6-on-6 situations. That's not great pace because the efficiency is not showing that it's being productive. So take the shots early, but in those times where you got transition, where you got numbers, where you just got the defense, you're not set. Big Nick knows I love. It's nobody on this pod or podcast has invested more emotionally and financially besides the big boosters of Ohio State for the Buckeyes. So I definitely say this out of love as my amicus curiae brief to the High Court.
This was incredible. I mean, tremendous stuff. You'd love to see it. I'll just make a couple points just to echo you, and then we'll get out of here. Garrett Haas is by far taking up. I mean, he's the only guy who really carries the ball in this offense, and I understand a lot to a good degree because he's definitely, aside from Hawker, he's their other than Melendez. I don't know if there's really anyone else on this offense who's a passer, so he's got to have a good amount of the ball for sure. But he's got 27 turnovers. He's got 15 assists. Listen, when you're the main guy on the offense, you're inherently going to have turnovers. That's just part of the deal. But 15 assists to 27 turnovers is a little. Usually, if your assist to turnover ratio is even, it's okay, I can deal with that. If your assist to turnover ratio is almost negative, negative 1 to 2, that's not great.
2 to 1 in the wrong way, yeah.
In the wrong way, yeah. 2 to 1 in the wrong way, not what you want. but he does shoot the ball really well. And then if you look at, like, again, yeah, Hawker, third in shot share. His usage rate, as you mentioned, is third on the team. He's not turning the ball over a bunch, but again, he doesn't pass a lot. Like, I think that's an obvious point. I think this gets to what I was mentioning on the show, on the live show on Saturday, and you've definitely done a great job kind of elaborating on it, is that I think you made a more erudite point about like how they can utilize their defense. Their offense is built around having guys who can dodge and win matchups and shoot. And then, like, when they do, if they can either shoot or they draw a slide and they can pass. And it's like, keep it simple. If your offense is built around that, when I watch their offense, there's so much of guys just like holding the ball in their sticks and the ball being in like one guy's stick for 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds. It's like, that's not these guys' game. Like, if your game is that you have guys who can dodge, and I do think it's not what it was last year, where they had their offensive midfield was so deep and had so many options. I think it's a lot less. But not like the ball should be getting out of guys' sticks way quicker. Like, the ball should be moving. It should not be one guy's, in the corner holding it for 5, 6, 7 seconds, and he passes, another guy holds it. Like, that's not doing it. But you hit on it. It's like, what is their offense not good at? Well, obviously the efficiency numbers themselves are not good. They don't shoot the ball particularly great. They're 29% shooting percentage. That's 44th. Now what you want? You mentioned turnovers. They turned over on over a third of their possessions. That's 58th in the country. So you turn the ball over too much. You don't shoot it great. In the 6-on-6, you're not doing much of anything particularly good offensively. What do you do great as a team? You nailed it. Obviously, your defense is tremendous. You have a great goalie who saves a lot of shots himself. So you have a goalie who's going to make saves. You know that. You can weaponize that by having him get the ball out himself. You are an exceptional clearing team, as you mentioned. I think you said it was something like 90. They're 6th in the country. They clear at 95%. So you have a great defense that is going to get stops. You have a goalie who is going to make saves like himself, and gobble it up. And then you are an elite clearing team. That gives you opportunities to push the ball more because you're going to clear it, right? And you're going to get a bunch of saves. And then, like, in that, you can use that to push in, transition. If you get a bunch of clean saves, Quint mentions all the time, clean saves can equal runouts.
Yeah.
Clean saves, and you are an exceptional clearing team. Save it, one pass to your guys. Now, maybe this is if I'm being charitable, I suppose maybe the argument is they're not as deep, short stick defensive midfield wise as they were last year. That's true. They're still pretty good, but last year they were really deep. That's an argument for not pushing it as much. If I wanted to be charitable, if you didn't, you could argue their offense has, by and large, looked the same for a long time now. But if I was going to be charitable, that would be an argument why. Utilize what you do well. Like, in the 6-on-6, what are you doing well? It's I don't know. Like, Hawker is, he's the one matchup guy. I would argue, I think you nailed it. Push transition, and when you are in 6-on-6, run him out of the box and see what matchups you can get. See if you can get a matchup on a shorty out of the box. Or if he gets a long pole, all right, then go then bring him a pick and do something from there. Your offense, I think their offense should be built around transition, and I do like Hawker heavy invert, out of the box, get in matchups, and probably do the same thing for Haas. And I just play like that, and they do some of that anyway. But you're 100% correct. Why are you doing more of the stuff you're not doing well?
Absolutely,
it's not.
In short, stop trying to fix the offense and start playing a style that avoids.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, we got 5 weeks to Selection Sunday. Is your offense, we talk about your offense has to get your 40th or something right now in adjusted offensive efficiency. If you get to 20th, you're a national championship contender. If you're at 40 on Selection Sunday, I'm sorry, like I think a lot of us are going to be sitting here saying this might be a team out in the first round. If you get to 20, there are going to be people who are going to pick you to make the Final Four. How do you get to 20? Are you really going to get that much better in 6-on-6 offense in the next 5 weeks?
Exactly.
Like they could get better. I'm not saying they can't get better, but it's also like think about the context of the Big Ten. Think about like how these games are going to go over the next 5-6 weeks. We all know how it's going to look a lot like the Rutgers game you just played. How can you get easy offense that allows you to manufacture goals, and then maybe through that, by forcing defenses to play you differently, you can do different things. You mentioned it. Maybe you don't score initially, but you can plug defensive personnel you can get defensive personnel trapped or offensive personnel trapped on the field for the other team. And then you can do some things that way. Maybe you can tire them out and you can force them, and then, you can attack their shorties later in the game, things like that. Ohio State is not going to become a great 6-on-6 offense. I don't think that's in the cards. But you can become maybe a little better 6-on-6 offense that gets a couple goals in transition every game, and then you're in business. I think you know it.
100%. A replacement level offense, and it totally changes the ceiling, as you aptly put at the beginning. Like,
yeah,
the ceiling right now is a hard ceiling if you're only going to get like 7 or 8 goals. Like, it just not 10, 11. You get frisky 12. Like, that just changes the entire dynamics.
Yeah, that's the thing we talked about when I was mentioning the thing about their defense. It's like, I'm not disputing their defense is awesome. It's a different. Listen, this Ohio State team without a shot clock, they might be able to win 3 games in a row or 4 games in a row, scoring 7-8 goals, maybe. With a shot clock, no. Like, the game is not designed for that type of team anymore. Obviously, this team is good. It's not, but it's when the opponents you're placing are the best they are, when the face-off are the best, the goalies are the best, all this. Can you really draw sevens just every week trying to score 7 goals? No. You can maybe do it once. Twice even feels unlikely. You're not going to win 4. Certainly not. So I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that was perfect.
Appreciate it. No,
it's 5 good minutes. We went longer than 5 here, but that's our style. But we got something cooking.
Absolutely. I appreciate giving me the floor. That was great.
Of course. Shout out to Uncle Tony and Mike for stealing their idea.
Yeah, right.
All right, folks. This was a good one. We thank you for listening. We will be back this Saturday, probably evening again, because it's Penn State, Ohio State, isn't it? Yeah. And it's 4:00 on BTN Saturday. Pretty stuff. So probably live after that. There's a BTN double. I think there's 2 double headers, BTN and ESPN ACC this weekend. You got Notre Dame UVA at 12 on ESPNU. You have Syracuse Duke 2 ESPNU, and then you have Maryland Michigan 2:00 on BTN, and Penn State Ohio State 4:00 on BTN. So you've got 2 double headers. That's 4. Also Hopkins Rutgers 12:00. Say if you go into that game.
I'm trying to think. I am going home this weekend. I get back on Sunday. Maybe that one. That'd be great. Yeah, if it's scattered away, especially the hockey games are always boisterous crowd for sure. And it's one of the fewer games that haven't been on like prime time. I remember like a couple recent games over like 7:00.
I missed the Sunday when a different pod, maybe off-season pod. I have a plan to fix the. I'm like, just listen to me. Like the coaches, TV execs, I got to figure it out for how we can fix this TV situation. Is anyone going to listen? No, but
they should.
Like, we'll listen. And but I got a plan. I missed the BTN Sunday nights.
Okay.
It was
BTN. That was a brand. That was a real brand. Yeah,
it was. It's what put the conference on the map. Like the conference this decade in the 2020s is obviously it's an elite conference. It's got usually not this year maybe, but in the past couple of years, all 6 really good teams. Those first couple of years, the Big Ten was not that. It was a very top heavy league. But what got the conference recognition, aside from like Maryland being, in Hopkins and that, was that even when Rutgers maybe wasn't great or Michigan wasn't great, and Penn State kind of struggled those first couple years as well, was that the Sunday night games always were great atmospheres and also were competitive because they were true home field advantages. Every time Rutgers played a Sunday night, it didn't really matter how good they were. The game was always competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, because it was the atmosphere, it was the last game of the weekend. They had the floor to themselves, and the games usually delivered. And that's what put Big Ten lacrosse on the map.
They were it was the hottest content out there for. I remember this like Glovegate, the fights. The Hopkins Rutgers games, a couple of those one like the buzzer beater that like infuriates Rutgers.
I remember Rutgers unfortunately was, those first couple years, especially like 2016, 17, 18, the Sunday night games later in the year felt like Rutgers' entire seasons were on the line.
Yeah.
I remember the one in 2017 where they played Maryland, and Maryland was on their like 3rd game in a week, and Rutgers, they had them done, and Maryland stole it in like overtime, and that was pretty much what launched Maryland after that to the championship that year. But it was one of those where it was, all those Rutgers Sunday night games feel like they went down to the wire. And they had some opportunities. Panzer, that's when Panzer really, popped. One thing about that and popped off as a big time venue. And especially for those teams, like because Maryland almost never played Sunday night, and Hopkins didn't. And Hopkins obviously was on ESPN. For those other teams, that was like what made kind of identifiable. In the Sunday nights were always in Piscataway or they were at Panzer. That's what really made it kind of a big deal. And especially now that Ohio State has its own stadium, Michigan has its own stadium, Penn State obviously has its own stadium. All these Sunday nights will be incredible environments, as opposed to like in football stadiums, things like that. I don't know. I get it. I know the coaches. Like I understand. USA Lacrosse Magazine put out that article that was like, what goes into these things for like doing the neutral site games, and they mentioned things. It's like it's good for recruiting. The players like it. All that like benefit things like that. And I'm like, what I didn't hear a lot of? It's great for our fans.
Yeah.
Or 2, it's great for like the broader people watching at home.
Definitely.
It's great for the people there. I'm sure. I'm not disputing that. The players like playing. I'm sure. I'm like, I'm that all matters. I'm not saying don't take that into consideration. 1, your fans like that is a big part of it. And number 2, yes, I'm not. You can definitely grow the game by going and playing a game in Chicago. Sure, you can also grow the game by having a big spotlight on you playing on national television. That's also growing the game too.
That always doesn't hurt getting eyeballs on it. Yeah,
that creates new fans too. So yeah, I don't know, but a lot of games this weekend. 4 national TV games. We'll be back Saturday to break it all down. Next Wednesday, we will have our good pal Mark Hart at Fieldy Stick on to talk bracketology for the first. It's April 1st. Perfect timing.
Not an April Fool's joke. Not an April
Fool's joke. All right. We let it all out there on this one. We hope you enjoyed it. Like the video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/lacrossecommission. If you're listening to it the old-fashioned way, give us a thumbs up, whatever they do on these podcast platforms. And we'll see you out there. Becky Lynch for president.